Grab your beverages and turn up your interweb. Solving the world's problems 12 ounces at a time. It's Dudes and Beer.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 138 of the Dudes and Beer podcast. I am Chris Jordan, your host. With me tonight is Stephen Bishop.
What's up, guys?
Julie Connolly is not in studio tonight, but we would love to give a big shout out to her and her son Liam, who just turned 16. Happy birthday to one of the younger dudes out there, Liam Connolly, who I know listens to the show, things like that. So
I kind of sort of
enjoy. He and his mom went out to a movie night to enjoy a night out.
That's cool.
So, yeah. And
mom and son
with
at a
things
movie
like that in mind,
16.
thinking about going out, using your credit card this time of year, that kind of stuff. I work a lot of conventions, and I ran across this awesome presenter, Sean McClesky. Robert Sean McClesky is the project coordinator for the Law Enforcement Education and Leadership at the Center for Identity at the University of Texas, Austin. He's also a faculty member in the Master of Science Identity Management and Security program. Prior to this position, Sean served as a special agent with the United States Secret Service in the San Antonio field office. From 1998 until his retirement in 2015, during his tenure, he conducted a variety of investigations to include counterfeit currency, bank fraud, identity theft, credit card abuse, child pornography, narcotics trafficking, domestic terrorism, the threats to protectees of the United States Secret Service as well. He was also assigned to the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force for approximately 3 years, where he exclusively conducted investigations regarding potential terrorist activities within the United States. During his tenure with the agency, Sean created and then served as the group leader of the South Texas Regional Task Force, a multi-agency unit which was comprised of the U.S. Secret Service, San Antonio Police Department, U.S. Postal Service, Homeland Security Investigations, Texas Department of Public Safety, IRS Criminal Investigation Division, Behar County District Attorney's Office, and United States District Attorney's Office, Western District of Texas. The principal mission of the task force was to investigate organized groups who are involved with identity theft, financial, and cyber crimes. Most recently, Sean served as a special prosecutor with the Behar County District Attorney's Office Public Integrity Unit, and he earned 2 bachelor's degrees of science in political science and criminal justice from Texas Christian University and his Juris Doctor from St. Mary's University School of Law, and was admitted to the Texas State Bar in 1998. So just a little background on our guest here, folks. Welcome to the show, Sean.
Thank you very much for having me tonight, guys. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely.
Hell yeah.
And ever since I saw you present, it's something that, having worked in media the way that I did, doing investigative journalism and digging into stories that are just buried in the media constantly, it's something that this show has been highly, highly keen on, is the fact that your data is precious. You need to treat your data like gold, and you need to try and do what you can to mitigate circumstances of a digital presence.
Right.
I mean, good God, if it wasn't for this podcast, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I'd even be on Facebook necessarily. I keep track of a few friends and family.
People still haven't fully grasped the whole thing about how precious and how, the identity thing, and how they should keep their stuff, don't be passing out numbers carelessly and stuff.
Well, and I tell my retired mom that all the time, hey, you should probably just ditch your home phone. 90% of people are going to call you on your cell if they know you. Now, Sean, I would like you, because just before the show we were talking about it, I would like you to define, as a lawyer, as someone involved with law, what identity is here in the United States.
So that's a great question. So identity means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, which is sort of one of the issues we have with this area. And, if you look at it in the aspect of, criminal law and federal criminal law, identity typically is classified as an access device, which means usually some number or some unique number that will allow access to an account of some sort. And then there's also with the means of identification, which lists certain things that are, again, unique numbers, possibly some biometric information, those type of different things. So it sort of depends on, kind of the arena that you're looking at, and whether, or if you're looking at it, from sort of a medical viewpoint, or if you're looking at it from a financial viewpoint. So that's one of the hard things about this is there's a lot of different definitions. There's, what is identity? The one thing that you mentioned early on is that I don't think people realize that identity is really a commodity. I mean, it's value, and I don't think a lot of people think of that. They sort of see it as, they kind of see it, but they don't realize, okay, this is, this thing has a lot of value to somebody out there. And it's amazing if you ask somebody to, can I borrow $20? A lot of people won't do it. I mean, if you say, but hey, I need this information because I got to do this, and I need it for this, a lot of people will probably hand you everything that they have.
Oh yeah. No, yeah. I mean, you see videos all the time. Yeah. Mark Dice is famous for it. Like, dude, you can go out and get people to sign any petition and give you an email address, like all kinds of stuff, man. Right. Like, people will do it all day long. And not even think twice about it. Like, I've got throwdown email addresses, man. Like, whenever people like force me to give them an email address, like, here's Hotmail. Like, I check that like once a year and just erase it.
Even I figured that out, over the years, like have a throw out one,
Well, and as a business owner, as someone and we were talking about this before the show too, like, as we wonder where all these spams, all these junk mail things, all these phone things and everything else come from. They're all stuff that we've actively registered for at some point.
Right. Of course.
Like whether it's like I was telling Sean, whenever we moved to our rent house, we did not fill out change of address forms because that information is straight up sold on a list. Right. Like, you're put on a list and they sell it to people who send you mailers and stuff like that.
You can do something online and give it out once and then have a bunch of other things hit you. Right. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Because like what you're saying, they sell the information.
Now, we were discussing earlier, Sean, that there is a difference in how we in the United States and the EU define identity when it comes to this kind of stuff, when it comes to social media and everything else. What is the distinction there?
Well, the real distinction is that in Europe, particularly in the EU, that they view identity. They view that information is incredibly valuable, to the individual. And so they feel like when an organization collects that data, they really feel like that organization becomes the steward of that data, that they're there to take care of it. They're there to do the right thing with it. And that you don't, the person, the consumer who gives that data doesn't just hand it over and lose all rights to it. That it's no longer theirs anymore. They just have that different philosophy when it comes to that. Where, over here to some degree, I feel like it's sort of like, okay, we've got your data, great, move on your merry way. And, you've kind of given it up, you really have a say so, where that data is, how it's used, how it's going to be, transacted, what's going to happen to it. And I think that's a big difference, where, they just generally feel like, okay, data is really people. And over here, it's kind of, really we're looking at business first and then the data, how it relates to people, a second. I think that's one of the big kind of shifts that you see.
Well, and I think it's not only a huge shift in paradigm to begin with, just in the way that you think, but in the concept of ownership, because I think we, especially in America, like I was saying on the phone the other day, have this concept that like, we've got to make it now. We'll figure out the intricacies later. Right. Like we have this like,
that's how we're moving through this technology.
Damned if you don't make it. you know, and unfortunately we've created a society that is so dependent on social media and things like that people actively think that like their social media page is a private page. Good God, like when because you did not retire too long ago from Social Security, or not Social Security, but Secret Service. And how often did y'all use social media, things like that, to actively just catch a criminal? Because I know like Texas Department of Wildlife recorded like 100% fold increase in catches.
Wow.
You know, because people were posting a picture of themselves with like a deer that they shot in their backyard in July.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, dude, it's not hunting season, and your backyard is not registered hunting grounds. So
yeah, absolutely no. In fact, one of the last cases that I worked, it wasn't an identity theft case, but it was a counterfeit currency case in which the individual was making a certain bill that was easy to track. I mean, once I knew where the bills were, I could find them because they had a certain mark on them that would allow me to know this bill belongs to this printer. We didn't really know we had video of a lot of people, and then kind of once we got one clue, we went to this guy's Facebook page, and all of a sudden, all of our suspects were listed as friends on there. And then he started going around.
Made it easy for you.
He started posting, well, here I'm in Little Rock. Well, I'm in St. Louis. I'm in Chicago. I'm up here. Well, we started, well, let's just call those offices and see if they've. Sure as heck, there it was. I mean, there was that bill, and so it was kind of mind blowing to sit there and go, okay, this guy has really given us, and he was pretty good. I mean, he was pretty good at his craft, and he was pretty good about being very surreptitious
he was pretty stupid about the internet.
Yeah, he just couldn't help but doing on putting it online. It was amazing to me, and we really how we broke the case was using social media.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's from what I understand, fairly typical of at least higher level criminals, is that they do have that flamboyant flair, like they want attention for some reason, going into stuff like cyber crimes, things like that, and hacking. Because one of the things we were talking about previously was exactly how readily this information is available, not just through digital engineering, but through social engineering, through actively just walking into somewhere and asking for information.
A lot of times what you will find, even if it's sort of labeled in the media as a cyber attack or, a network intrusion, a lot of times if you dig deep, you will see that there's an element of social engineering in it, because it works. I mean, the simple reason is it works. They play on people's fears. They play on emotions, and, even very, very smart, very knowledgeable people tend to fall for this. I got a call a couple of months ago from somebody during, saying, hey, the IRS was fixing to take me to court.
Yeah, for the famous phone call from IRS.
That whole scam. I knew better, but I will tell you, for the split second I got the call, you're like,
oh my God.
What did you kind of, and then you go, I know who this is. This is a scam. But it's that split second of the, fear, and some people are unable to, sort of.
I've got a friend that had a phone call similar. I don't know if it was IRS, and said he owed $500 or something that he didn't pay. He was going to get sued, and of course he paid out. And I'm like, dude, why'd you do that?
Well, and most of the time, like I said, I got one today that was like, utter robot voice, and like I said, you could tell it was like a program that was reading text, and that the text that was there was written in broken English. Kind of like those bad
YouTube videos.
And I wish that I could have recorded it. I could not make it to my recorder in time with it on speakerphone.
It is a weird phenomenon that people are so readily willing to give over that information.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it goes back. We were talking earlier, and this is like a little exercise I have people do. Is that we've sort of associated identity with, and to some degree rightly so. But okay, your identity is boiled down to largely. I mean, you have digital identity, obviously, but then you have your driver's license, right? You have a credit card, you have your passport, you have a known traveler card. For me, I have a UTID, I have a retired Secret Service badge and credentials. So all those things sort of identify me, right? They sort of say who I am.
Sure.
But they're pieces of plastic. They are, even if it's a PIV card with a secure chip in it, it's still a piece of plastic.
It's like an extension of what you are.
Yeah, if it's lost, it can be replaced, right? There's that psychology of, okay, if I lose it, if it's stolen, what do I do? I go, I apply for it, I get another one.
Just get another.
You can't replace the story, the sort of the life that you've led to be able to have some of those privileges, some of those credentials.
Sure.
And that's the disconnect is we forget, okay, if I can get a new driver's license, sure I can get a new retired Secret Service badge, but if somebody's out there using that stuff, in a nefarious nature, can I replace the damage to my reputation?
Yeah, the credibility.
Ooh.
Yeah, and then so we just have this. I think sort of this general kind of philosophy that some of this stuff is readily replaceable.
Well,
and in fact, the story that led up to your life history, your story is who you are. That's not so easy to replace.
Yeah, and that's just it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. Like I've got a charge against me back in Houston from about a decade ago,
right?
Close to that. And hey, it's popped up whenever. It's never popped up whenever I've gone to buy a firearm, things like that. But it's popped up whenever I've gone to rent a house. And I've had to provide them with my court documents. Yep. But for everything else, it's gone. It's
to them that they don't know you, that defines you, and they look at that.
I've gone through Secret Service background checks to work on military bases, to put microphones on presidents, things like that. So, I have no fear of any background check as far as it goes. But when it comes to my data, when it comes to me, it is that question of where does the line of privacy stop? And Dean Larinaga, one of our regular listeners, has chimed in on our chat box here with some questions, Sean. How about the millions of information and cookies social media apps ask for on mobile devices or with keylogger data, aka Facebook? How do you suggest someone protects themselves when all this data is required to use certain sites or features and still be safe?
Well, that's a really good question. It's a hard question to answer. And some of this is going to have to be, what my theory is that, how much do you really want to use these sources? How much is,
and how are you using them?
For you? Yeah, and how are you using them? And do you really, how frequent do you use them? How often do you use them? How many do you need?
Yep.
And it's one of those things that, that you have to sort of do an assessment. I think at any time, okay, what am I handing over? Why am I handing it over?
Mm-hmm.
And, am I comfortable with doing it? You kind of have to make your own sort of self-assessment to that. And, the reality of it is that the more more that you do that, the more that you hand that over, the more your information is going to be out there.
Yes.
So I think it's kind of one of those things where you just have to kind of make a personal decision about how much I'm going to put out there. Now, there's some people that have no social media, presence at all.
Right.
There's some that have a little bit, and then there's some that are on there every single day. And I think it's just kind of one of those personal choices where you're most comfortable with. But, again, recognizing that anytime that anytime you log on to something or anytime that you visit something that, you're going to, there's a high level chance that your information is being, taken in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
And you think about it, one of the really cool things we did at the center was we built a program called Privacy Checker, which actually reads privacy policies from organizations.
Oh, wow.
You can download it from Google Chrome, and there's it's got 10 icons up there, and when you pass over each icon, it'll tell you what the icon is, and it will rank it red, yellow, or green. So obviously green means that's, probably favorable. Red means, you might want to double check and see what they do. But it gives you some sense of, okay, this is what this is how my information is being used. And, it gives you a little bit of consumer protection and a little consumer awareness to some degree.
Well, and tell us real quick what the Center for Identity at the UT School of Law is all about and what the master's program is all about, because I am utterly enthralled with this idea and amazed that it actually exists. It's a beautiful day and age, folks.
Yeah, I've never heard of this. It sounds cool.
So we are a university-wide center. So we have faculty that come from all aspects of the university, and so we we as far as the center itself, so we do a lot of outreach. We also do a lot of research on identity. We look at things like, again, what is identity? What are the different types of ways you can identify somebody? What is the value of that identity? That's one of the things we're working on. We model identity theft and breach cases to see, okay, again, what kind of data are people trying to get? How are they getting it? Again, trying to assess a value. How do the different pieces of identity connect? If you get one or two pieces, what other pieces would that lead you to? What kind of profile can you build? That's one thing we do through a project called the ITEP project. And then we also do a lot of education. So we have a 3-day course that's an identity leadership certificate course where we kind of go into these topics. We discuss things. We look at different laws. We look at we just kind of go into all things identity in those 3 days and give people sort of an idea of what this discipline, this new emerging discipline, has to offer.
Well, it really is a new emerging discipline. Like I have a friend of mine that's a trader who's lives in Pennsylvania. He was just on the show, Michael Davis. Love you, Mike. But he has no social media presence. He shuns everything. Like he got a Google account finally. Like I've been begging him to get the Dudes and Beer podcast app, and he's like, I can't get it, man. I'm not on Google. And he got Google, and I was like, tell you what, just so you don't have to go to the app market, here's a copy of the actual app.
And people
like
look at
I
him.
emailed him a copy of the app. It was like, just download this to your phone and install it.
It's like
that
he's
way you
like
don't have to go
he's
through
like
Google.
Tesla. Everybody thinks he's crazy, but he's probably the smartest one.
Yeah, like he has. I mean, his dance school that he and his wife owns has some social media presence, but other than that, the two of them have none. None.
Well, and it's when I say, and that's one of the things we found with this new discipline, and one of the other reasons we partnered with the School of Information at UT, and we offered this master's degree program. It's a 2-year program that is really based for working individuals. It's a Friday and Saturday, 1 week in a month for 2 years. But it was to sort of fill that gap. Like when you talk to people who are in the identity space, a lot of them, or most of them, they started doing something else. They just happened to all of a sudden find themselves in this particular field. Whether they're again, they have a computer engineering degree or electrical engineering degree, or they're a lawyer, or they're HR, or they're communications, but all of a sudden they found themselves in this field. And so we're trying to kind of help put together programs that are actually provide education and instruction and training in this in this new emerging field right now.
Well, and, especially, how does somebody go about registering for the 3-day class? Because that sounds like something very intriguing. That
it is, yeah.
We offer the course twice a year. It's usually in November in Austin and in April in Washington, D.C. So we try to split it up so different folks can get there. And so we just finished up so we've had 2 in Austin now and 1 in D.C. So we just finished up the one in Austin, and now we'll start looking at the one in April in D.C. And again, it's on our website. Center for Identity, University of Texas at Austin. And there's a lot of, and as you guys have probably seen, besides that, there's a lot of great resources on there.
There are fantastic resources, really. Great documentation on how to avoid internet fraud, how to keep yourself out of that loop, how to spot the scams when they come about. All kinds of stuff. And that's identity.utexas.edu, folks. Identity.utexas.edu is the website. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that you were presenting whenever I first came across you, Sean. Specifically because the whole context of this episode is people protecting their identities during the holiday season. And it's not necessarily,
that's a toughie.
It's not even necessarily online, folks. Like, it's your local vendors, man.
Right.
Like, it's your local trusted restaurant and bar that you walk into on a daily basis.
Because you don't have to enter it in on the internet. They can enter it in.
No. Hey, and the one case that I'd like you to talk about is the one that you were mentioning about the the popular restaurant there in San Antonio that was totally social engineered. It was not anything involving the internet or digital or anything like that. And it kind of shows you how easy it is for somebody to social engineer your data and start backtracking it, and it go through a whole tree of people into horrible, horrible circumstances. So go into that a little bit for us.
Yeah, so that was a case that we worked fairly early in 2000. It might have even been in late 1999, 2000. But effectively, we had a waiter at a very popular restaurant in town that had been compromised. Turned out to be by a drug organization across in Mexico. And they had gone into the credit card business to some degree because it was very lucrative. You could make a lot of money off stolen credit card numbers.
Ooh, man.
And so this gentleman was, when you would hand him your card, because remember, for most restaurants, when you hand your card, they take it back.
Yeah.
And they swipe it, or now with the chip, they insert the chip in. And so what he was doing is he was carrying a skimming device, a card reader in his apron, and he would walk back and just swipe it in.
And this is like late 99, early 2000.
Yeah. And so anyway, we started getting some calls in. It took us a while to figure out, okay, what was the point of compromise? And we were able to do some investigation. All of a sudden kept going, okay, well, everybody, the same point of issue was this one particular restaurant. And then we sort of narrowed it down where we started looking at, okay, is there a number on the receipt of the person that transacted it? Well, it all started being the same guy. And then, ultimately we were able to put our sights on him and pull him in. But it just went to show about, really kind of how easy it was. I think that's what struck me at that time. And I was a fairly new agent at that point, was how this was not very sophisticated.
No.
Wow.
And then they were, using these credit card numbers all over the place to buy lots of different items. And again, it took a while because, if you and I are eating at the same restaurant and we don't know each other and our cards are compromised, we're never going to, we're never going to cross paths and say, hey, by the way, my credit card got.
Right.
Oh yeah. Hey, me too.
Utilized. So it went on for a while. And then ultimately, once we were able to identify that person, we were able to kind of grab him up and sort of push him back into the other group, and we're able to lure those individuals over. For the most part, I think there was a few that didn't come over, but we were able to get a number of their guys to come over, do a meet, and then arrest them over here on the state side for this type of offense. And so, but again, it really struck me as just how it wasn't very difficult to do, and didn't take a lot of really sophistication and a lot of planning. It's just, okay, hey, I've got an opportunity, and I'll start swiping these numbers and hope that people don't really pay a lot of attention to their credit card bill. Simple as that.
Dang.
Yeah, and the fact is, like, hey, how many people do actively, like, I'll admit the fact that I'm pretty retentive about it. Like, I check my balance, like, on almost a daily basis, at least. So if something pops up that I'm not aware of, like, it's, I've actually had it a few times, especially when I was with Bank of America, that my card would be cut off because of use online, stuff like that.
Or I bet when you travel and stuff, doesn't it get suspicious? Like now you're.
I actually have gotten into the habit of contacting my bank and letting them know that I will be traveling.
Yeah, you're traveling.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I will be gone.
That's one of the really. Guys, that's one of the simplest things I tell people is, like, look, if you're going to use one card and one card only for as many things as you can. And that way, if it gets compromised, then it's a much easier problem to fix. I would rarely use your debit card anymore. I mean, really the only place I use my debit card is if I'm getting cash out. It's really come back, it's kind of reverted back to my ATM card, as opposed to being a card, a check card, kind of using that, because that money comes directly out of your account. Where at least if it's a credit card, if it's hit, then you've got time to. You're not actually out the money.
You can call and suspend it. You can put an action against the transactions and put a hold on them. Things like that. It's just
much easier to sort of particularly when you travel. I always say definitely you should always use one credit card when you're traveling. Because when you're traveling, you're handing it to just so many different people. Your hotel, restaurant. a flight.
Oh,
whatever.
man, I literally just had it, and it wasn't even like a social engineered thing, nothing like that. It was a straight up like error on behalf of the hotel that I was staying at when I was on my last gig in Pittsburgh. Like, number one, it was the first time that I'd ever stayed at a hotel, and I stay at some pretty classy resorts, things like that, you know, Venetian, that kind of stuff whenever I'm working in Vegas.
Jacuzzi suite.
But I've had a jacuzzi in my suite. I'm not lying. But I didn't have to pay $75 a night.
You lucky dog.
I didn't have to put $75 a night down on my card. And I was like, oh, fortunately, I've got some cash on my corporate card right now. So I put that down and called my boss, and he was like, oh, that's crazy. Let me put it on our card. You know, I know you come home, you go to sleep. Like, you aren't ordering any movies. You aren't ordering like room service at midnight.
Right.
You know, so I'll put it on our card. And they proceeded to charge my card. Granted, for the time I was staying, it would have been $450 hold on my card.
Right.
$1,096, Sean.
Whoa!
1,090. So it was like, hey man, it's not like you double tapped the button. You know, it's not like you entered it twice. This is a pretty deliberate amount. Like, what's 1,096 all about? Because that ain't 450 times 2.
Woo.
Right.
What a conversation to have.
And like the manager was like, that didn't happen. And I'm like, I've got it right here on a screenshot on my phone. And then the next day, like, said the same thing whenever I mentioned it while the lady from my bank was on the phone. I was like, what do you have in front of your face right now?
Oh, Jesus.
You know, and this kind of leads into another issue that I see, that I've seen a lot through my career at Secret Service, is that a lot of organizations, and there's some that are much better than others, but a lot of organizations don't really understand what kind of data they collect.
Yes.
They don't really understand how sensitive that data is. They don't, sort of segregate it. They don't classify it. They don't know really where it resides.
These are like those stewards of the data, right?
Yeah. They just, because it's sort of ancillary to their business, right? I mean, so if you sell, I'll just use an example, if you sell widgets or shoes, I mean, that's your product, right? That's what you're putting out the door. That brings you revenue in. So you're going to lock that stuff down, right? You're going to have inventory controls over it. You're going to know where it is because that's your revenue. So what I see is that the focus is on that. The focus on the information that's collected on the customers, the payment, their own employees, sometimes is not of that same level of value, because it's not seen as
level
the
value.
Physical. Yeah, and so I always say that's one of the biggest issues I see, is that you just sort of a lack of appreciating this value while they're really more focused. And again, not that they shouldn't be focused on their products or their shoes, but it should be evenly distributed. The sort of the concern and looking at the risk factor and all of that. And that's a real issue I see, and I have seen over the years. Yeah,
because I mean, even like we were talking about, like I saw it happen where partway through your presentation, whenever you started getting into that part of it, about exactly, and it was right after you talked about this case, and about like the information that they actively gather as a restaurant, whether it's people socially tagging them, whether it's them having a data stream that like I was telling you, the restaurant bar that I passed in Vegas with my wife.
Oh yeah, picked you up.
Yeah, like we were literally just we were passing by it on our way to go to a rock and mineral shop. And I was like, oh, yeah, I've thought about doing an episode of Dudes and Beer there. And on our way back, as we passed it, my phone went off with a Facebook alert, and they came and liked the Dudes and Beer podcast.
That's scary, dude.
And I never went to their website. I'd never stepped foot in there. I never marked myself there, anything like that. That was straight up through the voice of my phone, picking it up through social media while I was walking past somewhere that was registered on social media as a spot.
That's what you're alleging.
And not even alleged. Sean, am I lying in the fact that is possible?
That could be, depending on what's going on, that could be possible. Somehow they got that information. And I think it's a good point of, okay, what are you transmitting out there and you're not aware of it?
Absolutely.
What are you putting out there, and what are people doing to collect that information?
Yeah, as long as you've got your location on and stuff like that, and you've got location activated on Facebook and everything else, like,
I've had it happen, and I think I might have mentioned this before once on the show that, I was thinking about buying a new refrigerator. Not once did I look it up on my phone, but all of a sudden when I went to my social media, some ads were popping up like shit like that.
The president of Samsung came out a couple of years ago and said all the people like me that said your TV was listening to you weren't lying. That it actively listens to you. If you're on social media and you take quizzes and stuff or even talk about it nearby, we used to have it happen on broadcast all the time where we'd be off show and just talking about some gear while we were eating lunch and turn around to price it, and the ads on the internet were for the gear that we were just talking about.
Yeah, that's a different. And that is a different reality that we live in today. That we didn't. That's one of the things we didn't. You just didn't worry so much about that. I mean, when you knew there was sort of buyer beware or the consumer beware. If you're handing your stuff over, okay, well, you got to know that somebody's collecting it and they're going to use it in some form of fashion. Right? But it's that when it starts kind of inadvertently handing it over with really understanding. Where it's going and understanding what you're providing. I think that's when it becomes really, that's a very different topic.
And shouldn't those companies that are doing this, like holding this data, like be responsible to a certain extent?
That's what the EU believes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's absolutely. And then there's a lot of organizations that do a very good job, and that's not meant to say that there really are. I mean, it's just that it's a really laborious process, and it's a process that's going to change. I think that the new laws out of the EU, the GDPR, is going to really force organizations here, because if you're collecting data on an EU citizen, you're going to have to comply with these regulations, and they're going to really force you to look at a lot of what you do. I mean, is your what is the consent like? Are you explicitly do you explicitly have to give consent?
I believe so.
You should. You do, particularly for really sensitive data.
Well, and unfortunately, most people do not read the EULA. They don't read the end user licensing agreement.
I think they give it away without knowing they're giving it away.
No.
Like a podcasting friend of ours on our page and stuff like that just posted an episode on YouTube, and he was like, "Oh my God, they said that I couldn't do my episode of YouTube because, I was out covering bands that were covering Led Zeppelin." And like they muted his episode on YouTube, and I'm like, "Yeah, that's copywritten material." Do you have a right to actively transmit that? And
I bet the majority of the best information collected is the information given freely.
Well, most definitely, because people tend to surrender a lot. And one of the things that I'd like to talk about that you touched on earlier, whenever you were talking about the Center for Identity over at UT, was biometric data. That's something that we've had more than a few episodes on here. Because I'm of the mind, just thinking about it from a technical point of view myself, especially when you're talking about eye scanners for banks, that kind of stuff. Sure. Like, I mean, good God, the iPhone 10 was cracked by some like 10-year-old kid, like a week after it came out. Like the facial recognition, like he unlocked his mom's iPhone with the facial recognition,
the interesting thing about biometrics is that obviously, the more we do to secure, that's what we're trying to do. And the more we try to do multi-factor authentication, that's better too.
Yeah.
One of the things that, we've looked at, and I think I talked about it in the presentation, is if you're going to implement all this, if you're going to try to put these new security features in, particularly with biometrics in it, are people going to use it? Because it doesn't do any good to try to build this stuff if people are really, they don't like it, they're not comfortable with it, they're not going to use it. So you've got to also, you've got to look at that as well. What is really the consumer, usability of this type of security features that you put in there? And I think biometrics is a really interesting topic because, I think that ultimately, some of the things that I always talk about are, sort of the interest in behavioral biometrics, because to me, that is a much harder thing to fake. Your patterns of behavior are much more difficult to sort of, to replicate, right? I mean, we all have patterns of behavior. We all have certain websites that we look at. We, type on a keyboard differently. We we speak in a different, we do a lot of different things. And so to me, behavioral biometrics is a really interesting concept. Can you, develop enough of a baseline of a person based off patterns of behavior that you're able to authenticate them,
and quite honestly, I'll be honest with you. Like I said, I work a lot of high tech conferences. I work a lot of insurance conferences. A conference that I worked a few years ago for a couple years in a row was a Black Hat conference where it was hackers, things like that.
I remember that.
And they had the former head of Cyber Command on. And he was saying, this was like 3-4 years ago that I worked this conference. And he was saying 5 years before that, the FBI was coming to him and saying through biometric data, like what you're talking about, habitual use, checking in, things like that, they could actively predict where somebody would be 2 hours in advance. Through simply where they typically checked in, where their GPS on their phone located them at, things like that they could actively predict where they would be 2 hours ahead of time.
My life is so boring. I'm sure they can predict it 100%.
Oh God, yeah, dude. Like I'm either here or at my house.
I always tell people that when we were looking for somebody, when we had a warrant for somebody and we're trying to track them down. So if they're using a fake identity or they're just being very, under the radar, and
we're creatures of habit, my friend.
Yeah. They still all, if you figured out what that baseline behavior was, like where their mama lived or their grandmother, went to church, or their kids went to school, or they had a girlfriend, or they had a favorite bar, or they had a favorite car. Once you figure that out, if you sit on it enough, if you watch it enough,
those questions. Those sound like security questions. Like sometimes banks and stuff ask you those questions, for backup, like if you forget your password.
Well, not just that, but I mean, hey, people are being fired for that left and right all day long. CEOs, all kind of stuff for things that they posted on Twitter when they were in college 5 years ago.
Right.
All kinds of stuff. So like I said at the beginning, we've created this society of social media in America without necessarily considering the after effect. And I find it interesting that programs like Facebook, programs like Pokemon Go, by Niantic, things like that, were actively funded by the financial arm, In-Q-Tel, the financial arm of the CIA, basically to mine social data. And like, if you remember, one of the first big breaking stories about Facebook was the fact that it started the Arab Spring. Like, this anonymous person went on Facebook and said, hey, let's all meet in the square and overthrow Hosni Mubarak.
Oh, geez.
And
but it really is. I mean, those are the kind of things that, we really, but and I think ultimately when you're talking about authenticating people and trying to make sure this is the right person and digital identities, I mean, I think biometrics in general is going to play a part, but I think behavioral biometrics, and I don't know that it's, in an advanced stage at this point, but I know it's something that I wouldn't have called it behavioral biometrics, 10 years ago, but
it absolutely is. It absolutely is. That is an apt description
that identify people, particularly if they're trying to be somebody else, but that's harder to break.
Yeah.
It's easier to get a fake ID. It's harder to break a pattern of behavior. Simple as that.
Oh, absolutely. And finding that as an investigator must be one of the most challenging parts to actively get inside of the head and then have to leave the head of the person that you've been investigating for like sometimes a year or so, sometimes a couple years.
Right.
Investigations go on,
Well, it comes back to, I found this, and this is, again, it leads back into the conversation with identity. I found when you have a conversation, one of the things that we try to do in law enforcement, and I think sometimes it's, you don't see it as much on TV because it's the guy yelling at them, throwing the book, and really that never works. If you sit down and have a conversation, I don't care who with, if you're able to kind of get on their level, they will provide you a wealth of information, a wealth of personal identification. And it's amazing to me how people will hand that over if they in fact feel comfortable and you kind of build a rapport with them. And that's where in law enforcement, we've got to do a good job when we first encounter these people is getting as much of that information to build that baseline from them as we can, because you may not see them again until you have to put handcuffs on them.
Yep.
But if you don't do a very good job there, it's going to be you're not going to have that information. You're not going to have that all those.
Well, it's only going to hinder your investigation in the long run.
Yeah. And so one of the most important parts of law enforcement is the interview, and and if you're a good interviewer, you're going to be a much better investigator, and a much you're going to have a lot. It's going to be a lot easier to find whoever you're looking for down the road if you're able to to acquire all that data, particularly from them.
Well, and talking about biometric data, especially, it's one of those that I see it, like I said, in a very technical point of view. I see things like especially Google Glass, even the banks that have talked about putting retinal scanners in,
right?
That kind of stuff. When you're talking about a retinal scanner, you're talking about like an infrared laser. That infrared laser could just as easily tell your blood pressure, tell your blood alcohol content.
Right.
How long before the bank could actually tell you, like, sorry, you tend to like withdraw money at like midnight and then go out and drink. We don't think that's responsible spending.
Well, I think that's a great point in general when you talk about your and a friend of mine, I'm trying to think of what he used. He used a great term, sort of your self-authenticating self is what he called it, I think. I may be butchering it, but
sure.
He was really talking about the kind of the Fitbit at that time, saying, hey, did most people realize how much information it's gathering? And where is that information going?
Yeah, I mean, quite honestly, you gotta think about that in terms of an investigator, in terms of true biometric data, like your heart rate, your salinity.
Absolutely.
Like, that's a lie detector sitting on your arm, man. Like, it can read your salinity.
Right.
Well,
it could read your blood sugar, for crying out loud.
For example, you're doing you're going in for an insurance policy, either re-upping or getting a new one. They're like, how many times do you work out a week? Yeah, I work out 4. According to your Fitbit data, that would be once a month.
Like our listener Dean just chimed in. Sorry, your diabetes tells us that you're going to buy cakes. No ATM withdrawal for you. And quite honestly,
I'm right there with you, Dean. I don't know if I'd do the ATM at that point.
You were even talking about that earlier, using credit cards, things like that are much more trackable, much more secure than your actual debit card for most of your purchases. My mother-in-law does that. And hey, folks, if you're able to pay all your bills at one time at the end of the month, good God, go out and get an American Express. It'll do your credit amazing things.
Sure.
And not only that, you're using, like he said, one form of payment for everything, and at the end of the month, it's due.
It's due.
It's due in full. Like, she puts her mortgage on it. She puts all of that stuff on it. Gets crazy travel miles, all kinds of things.
Absolutely.
Damn.
No, that's exactly what I do now. I don't. Everything pretty much I pay for with one credit card, and I just pay it off at the end of the month, and it makes life a lot simpler. I can pretty much know exactly what's on there. I monitor it very regularly, and it just generally. There's a rare occasion where I have to write a check. It's usually for one of my kids' school functions that I've got to do that, for the fundraiser or for the cookies or for whatever. But very rarely do I have to do that now. I just pay everything, and roll it with that credit card and do that. And, again, if it gets hit, it gets hit. I've got at least a little bit more, control about, how fast I get notified of it, and we'll see it and then can deal with it pretty quickly.
Well, and, something that you just brought up was your children and buying things at your children's schools, stuff like that. One of the topics that we were discussing, not just before the show, but in our pre-phone interview that you and I had, was the concept of a digital age of consent. Because, like I said, and Stephen was there at the show when we were talking with the security expert that used to work with the Department of Defense. And I was like, I've seriously considered not posting pictures of my child online anymore.
Yeah.
Because, dude, that's facial recognition technology.
Exactly.
Like, there's biometric data there that I am purposefully giving up on his behalf.
You're freely volunteering that,
Where does that come to legally? Will we hit a point where that's a legality, where we actually, like we were discussing on the phone, with kids that have emancipated themselves? Like there was a whole Simpsons episode where Bart Simpson finds out he was little baby stink breath at like the age of 5, or not even that. He was like an infant, and it was like this baby breath freshener mint, and like his parents just squandered thousands of dollars, and emancipates himself and becomes an individual. I know Tiffany did that. There were a few artists back in the day. Gary Coleman did that. Because their parents squandered their money in their childhood and stuff like that. So where do we come to with the technology that we have now, with the social media that we have now, especially with minors joining social media? Like, good God, I remember a few years ago, probably about 5-6 years ago, before my niece was like of age, she was on Facebook and had a couple friends commit suicide, things like that.
Right.
I was talking about how she had a bad day, and I happened to notice that this dude like responded, and he was like my age. In his late 30s. And I'm like, this just seems kind of creeper, like, hey, if you need somebody to talk to, give me a call. And I like screenshotted it and I sent it to my brother, and I was like, you may want to check this out, and like stalked the dude down. And he was like, hey, you need to stop contacting my daughter and all of her friends on social media. Like, you're in your mid 30s and none of your friends are your age.
And I know your brother, he's a pretty big guy too.
And like that stuff's out there. So talking about a digital age of consent, like, where does that come in? Like, do we even consider that as a society? Like, when do we consider like that boundary between us posting something on our child's behalf when they're like 6 months old?
When you mentioned that, Chris, it was really one of those, when you mentioned that the other day when we were talking, I was like, that is a really interesting question. As a lawyer, I'm always trying to ponder different, legal aspects of some of this stuff. And I think it's a really interesting question. If you are posting stuff up there and all of a sudden that, becomes, becomes detrimental to your child, when does your child have at some point to say, hey, I'm not, I didn't post that up there. I didn't ask for this to come, my way. I don't know. It's really, but again, I think it sorts to the, the issue of just we've gotten so used to just putting this information out there, we don't really think of the consequences of it. I think we've talked about that throughout the entire podcast. It's just, it sounds fun. Let me put it up, tell everybody what I'm doing, and you don't really think of the long range, possibilities of what this could be. And some things could be good, some things could be bad. And I think generally with kids and social media, it's just a very difficult, subject anyway. And I've got three children, and and trying to monitor it, and when is the appropriate age for it. And
what are their ages?
So I have a 15, a 13, and a 9.
Okay.
And one of them has none. Obviously, the youngest has none. It won't for a while. The oldest has, Snapchat, and the middle child just got Instagram. And it's been a real debate amongst our houses. Okay, when do we allow this to happen? And and if I post a picture of my kids on Facebook, am I doing the same thing I'm telling them not to do? I don't know. That's a great question. But I remember having the conversation about, okay, you don't really know who that is on the other line, on the other line. Here, I'm dating myself, but on the other,
who's looking
on
at
the
this
social media context, and they're like, well, of course I do. It says it's John from, wherever. And you're like,
no, I could upload any picture. I could.
How do you know that's who it is?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, why would an older guy get on here? I'm like, but it was sort of like, they hadn't even thought about that. That hadn't even really crossed their mind.
No.
That anybody would be doing it for this nefarious reason, or they would be, why would they want to talk to me? I'm just trying to play a video game. Why would they, and you just, it struck me that we really, they just did not get it. It completely went over their head. The possibilities of bad things happening if they put this information out there.
Well, and how often did you, because you investigated this kind of stuff with the Secret Service, tell us about some of the cases that you had like that, where you were dealing with cyber crimes involving children, that kind of stuff?
Well, one of the cases that I had that wasn't a child, but it was a young lady who was involved in a relationship with a boyfriend, and they'd split up, and then he decided to post some pictures online that they had taken during the relationship, which were fairly they were very private photos. And subsequently, this gentleman decided to become her online and set up social media accounts, and then was pretending to be her. And that's it was sort of the first time I had come across that, and it was very frightening about how how easy it was to do, first and foremost, and then sort of the response that he could sit out there and talk as her, and people would be responding back to him thinking they were talking to her.
Sure.
And it was really scary. And what really struck me about that case was that we typically think, if you think about an identity theft crime, what do you typically think about? You really think about a financial crime, right? For the most part. It's probably, boom, my credit card got stolen, somebody cashed a check in my name, they open an account, I have a Best Buy, or I'm a car. But then you start thinking about, okay, well, there's really, that case was really not a financial, right? But they still used her identification, her means of identification, her name, and what damage it did to her. Not only just reputational wise, but just fear, the general lack, what she was not sure who was going to show up based off of this gentleman doing this. And so it really was one of those turning points for me to go, okay, this is really not just about financial losses. This is about, there's a lot more to this than just, replacing a credit card or closing an account or getting refunded your money. Your identity can, also be used in a very nefarious way that, again, we go back to that reputational damage.
Exactly.
And that really struck to me. And, and again, do you really know who you're talking to? Do you really have a sense of who that person is on the other line? Here I go again on the other line, on the other side of that computer or that device, and
not
really,
until you meet them,
it's just don't realize they don't.
Yeah, and that's just it. I don't think that really anybody, even at 18, has that far-reaching concept.
The concept, yeah.
No.
And I had some far-reaching concepts when I was 18, but. I can't say that I would have it because, good God, I was 20 years old whenever I was taking a class in HTML and stuff like that, because it was part of the education curriculum at the school that I went to. And I was like, what is this ever going to do for me? Like, now I code websites and stuff like that. I just didn't have that far-reaching concept because hey, like at that point, I was still dialing into bulletin boards. Right. It was still chat rooms. It was still AOL. And stuff like that.
We didn't have the big picture yet.
We didn't have the internet that exists now. True. And something that we discussed in our phone conversation the other day, Sean, was the fact that if you've purchased anything online within the last decade, you have actively been compromised. Right. Like, your information has already been hacked somewhere.
Or even maybe starting up an email, right?
Well, yeah. But
I always say that for the most part, you should assume that your information, because I get this question a lot, why do I even bother? All right.
Sure. Absolutely.
I'm sure my information is out there, and to some degree, I would say yes, your information is out there. If you go look on a public database, you're going to find quite a bit of information. You go look on tax records, you're going to find quite a bit of information. So what I say for the most part is, you want to try to minimize, your exposure. That's the best thing I can say, is that don't make it easy for somebody. Don't leave your mail in the mailbox. Go put it in the actual post office. All right. Yeah. Because I can tell you there's people running around stealing that stuff like crazy. Yep. If they get it, they're going to use it pretty fast. All right. It doesn't take long to wash a check or to counterfeit a check or to make a fake ID and go open a bank account. That can be done in days. And that's one of the things Chris, you saw in my presentation of the to the ITAP, these cases that we model. What we found that was, I think surprised a lot of people is of the 6,000 cases that we've looked at, about half of them never involved a computer. It was straight physical theft of data.
That's right.
And
it was social engineered.
Wow.
Yeah, it was social engineering, or it was stealing it through your mail, or digging in the trash, or or sending in a third party
sneaky
vendor, or compromising an employee, some form of fashion of that.
Yeah.
And that's how that data was compromised and then utilized. And then and so there's something to be said, and I always get some grief over this, but I say that, look, when these large data breaches happen, right, those are not good. I don't think anybody would say that's a good thing to happen.
Right.
For a variety of different reasons. But, if you're one of 4 million people whose, number is out there now, it's how fast are you going to be, if it's a credit card number, obviously it can be replaced, and, what's the chance that you're actually going to be, that card's going to be used? Yeah. Obviously, if it's your social, that can be out there forever and it's still valuable, at some point.
That's right.
But but you're one of 4 million. If you're 10 files from a doctor's office that got compromised, I can tell you from experience that you're going to get hit pretty fast.
Right.
And
I had the story just the other day from a girl that was at my house talking about how her identity had been stolen by somebody when they were arrested.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They were arrested, and the person was drunk, everything else. And they were like, they were like, this is like a 40-year-old black woman. And I am not a 40-year-old black woman. I am like a white woman in my mid-20s.
Whoa.
But whenever they asked, is this your information?
Right.
She said yes.
Yeah.
So her data, her address, and everything else was tied to this woman.
So she played along with it.
In the court system. And quite literally, like when she went to go get bonded, everything else for her job, like that kind of stuff came up. Like she has to have court documents about, and it was literally as simple as this woman saying yes, because she had no ID. She gave them their name.
Right.
That was it.
That was it.
Yeah. It's really pretty scary how fast that information can be, utilized. That's what I always say. I mean, it's not, there are people in San Antonio that if you have a couple of pieces of data on somebody, pieces of information, you can go get a fake driver's license.
Oh, sure.
Can get, W-2s. You can get pay stubs. I mean, you can do that really pretty fast.
There's a place that says IDs, like right up on 71 and I-10. like you pass by and it's just like IDs. That's all it says.
Yeah. Whenever they just say that and that alone.
I fear to even go near the place, quite honestly.
For novelty use only.
Yeah, exactly. Like that reminds me of the ones that my friends used to go get, where it's like, yeah, I can get in the club now. It's like, is it really worth getting in the club, bro? Like you're committing a felony to get in the club.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, and and unfortunately sometimes identity theft cases and financial crimes cases have to fight a fight to get kind of get prosecuted, because there's a lot of other crimes out there, right? There's murders, there's robberies, there's drug offenses, and there's weapons offenses. So we always in law enforcement find ourselves trying to kind of fight our way, to get sort of noticed on some of these cases. Obviously, you getting a big breach case with 4 million, you're going to get a lot of attention on that. But some of these sort of, lower dollar cases where you really have, you still have victims out there was really tough to do. And, and I got lucky. I had a good U.S. Attorney's Office that was very proactive in doing that. We tried this new case, or this new law called 1028A. It's a very interesting law where if you commit an enumerated federal felony like a bank fraud or a wire fraud or something like that,
okay,
you can attach what's called 1028 Big A, which is aggravated identity theft.
Ooh.
So you get 2 years added on to what your original sentence was going to be. So say you got 3 years for a bank fraud. So you went out and counterfeited some checks, opened up some accounts, and went out and did that. But you used Chris, I used your identity to do it. And
yeah.
I could not only be charged with the bank fraud, but I could be charged with the aggravated identity theft crime, which is 2 years mandatory prison time. There's no probation on it.
Good.
Which is really huge. People don't. I mean, there's a lot of financial crimes, right? You could potentially get probation based off the dollar loss that you incurred.
Sure.
Well, it doesn't matter if there's $5 or $100,000. If you get charged with that, you're going to prison for 2 years.
That's beautiful.
And so we use that statute quite a bit, and we're able to really make a dent in our identity. Our group of our repetitive identity thieves here in San Antonio.
Well, I know whenever we were looking for rent houses, we came across what was an obvious scam once we got into it. I was actually in Florida on business, and we were looking for rent houses, and my wife was like, this place is literally the words were too good to be true. And I was like, well, send them some information. Contact them and see what's up. And they wanted all kinds of stuff, where we had rented previously, bank account information and credit history, all that. And I was like, whoa, let's slow down the horses a minute or two, and let's see if we can just set up an appointment to go see the place. And they were like, well, I live in Florida. I'm a U.S. military service person, and my wife is out on mission right now, but we just didn't like the realtor that we were with, and we've decided to go private and, look at it and put it out on the market ourselves as up for rent. I'm like, all right, so here's what you get. And we gave them, I think, our driver's license information. That was it. Our basic information, nothing more. Like, you've got our phone number, feel free to call it. And he called me from a phone number in Florida, and we talked all kinds of stuff. And I went and I checked out the place, and whenever we got there was a sold sign. And I was like, curious. Yeah. So I called the sold number, and she was like, oh no, 5 of my properties were scammed on Facebook. And I was like, really? Well, let me do you this solid. And I literally called the Austin Police Department Fraud Division and gave them the Facebook ad, gave them the responding email, gave them the phone number from the guy and the phone number from the realtor. I was like, this is actively going on in your backyard right now. This is a federal case waiting to happen. Because of the fact that you've done it across state lines, that now makes it federal. Whoa.
Yeah, well, but that is, Chris, that's somebody, taking sort of onus upon themselves to kind of be curious and to ask questions.
Yeah.
And I can just tell you how many times that doesn't happen. And it's one of the most bewildering, baffling things I've ever, I just see it all the time. And people don't want to, it's like they don't want to disappoint them. And again, but if you ask that same person for $20, you couldn't pry it out of their, their hands, man. Yeah. It's one of the most just baffling things I've witnessed.
They know the value of money, but they don't know the value of their own identity.
That is, if you could sum it up, that's it right there.
Well, and what was, in your investigation time, what was the first scam that you remember seeing, online scam?
So the first online, I'm trying to think. I mean, the first scam one of the first times I ever came across an identity theft case was because it's funny, we didn't really look at it. When I first started, I didn't really use the term identity theft. It's kind of interesting. I didn't really everything to me was in terms of credit cards or checks or using somebody's social inappropriately or, without their authorization. So it was kind of a weird, and I'm sure identity was being used by that, but I didn't really use the word identity theft because the first case I ever worked was an individual that stole a retired teacher's Social Security number, went in and bought a Porsche.
Oh,
and,
God.
and the teacher was 65. The defendant, suspect was, 35, and nobody, when they ran the credit, nobody should have said, somebody should have said, hey, this guy looks pretty good for,
Right.
He does not look like a 65-year-old
Yeah,
woman.
if he's 65, I need to know what he's taking. And I don't think they really cared. I don't think the dealership was
The
like,
whole
yeah, sure,
point.
here you go.
Yeah, the whole point. Business don't care.
So that was kind of one of the first times that I recognized, okay, this guy is pretending to be this guy, but it was kind of weird. Like it wasn't so much the theft of the identity; he was using his Social Security number without his authorization.
Yeah,
which was kind of an interesting turn. And all of a sudden, identity started kind of creeping up, and then obviously when I started my unit in 2004, it was identity theft. So we started using that term. Some of the online early scams I really saw were kind of what we referred to as the 419 scams, which are the Nigerian scams.
Yes, the phishing scams.
Yeah, at that time where it was a variety of ones. First and foremost, they had, I'm a prince, and I
had that one.
Yeah,
I did.
Yeah, or I've got materials. I own a business, a construction company. I have materials that are tied up. You can get a percentage of this. Or we even had the black money scam one time, which was, I have all this money. It's got a chemical on it. And I'll sell you the chemical to get off of. We actually arrested people in San Antonio trying to do that.
What kind of crap?
Wow.
I had web TV back in the day, which is really old, I guess now. But and I had that Nigerian email.
Yeah.
I did call the FBI too, and I sent it to them.
So really, what that's turned into now is we see right before I left, I saw a lot of the where they were kind of targeting, particularly seniors or folks that were elderly on dating sites and saying, hey, I'm this guy, and I really am interested in meeting an older lady, and all of a sudden, but by the way, I got this business, thing that I've got going on, and you send me this money. That was really,
the whole, exactly. I was gonna say, you left in 2015. That's right as everything.
I hope the hell my mom is listening, because she had
with Christian Mingle, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like there was, and it was specifically targeting those websites.
My mom had that happen within the last 2 years. And this guy owned a diamond company, across seas somewhere, and all that BS,
Yeah, I still think it's one of the biggest issues is sort of that social engineering.
Yeah.
You still have business email compromise issues where they're sending these bogus emails and flipping a couple of of the letters in the email so they don't notice. And again, that just somebody, you have a failure policy on that where, hey, I need you to wire money. It pretends to be the boss. I need you to wire money to this account, and nobody checks. They're like, yeah, okay. Boss says, send the money, and boom, there it goes overseas.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. It's usually, that's what we were talking about the other day, Chris, too, is that, I feel like technology gets better. Like we get smarter, technology gets better, but we still have a people problem.
The stupid's still there, man. And the problem is and as someone who worked security like you did in the Secret Service, I worked security at clubs, and you cannot deny the fact that when you get people en masse, the stupid quotient goes up.
It's just
like the ridiculous, what's going to happen quotient just goes up when you have people in large groups, and
you can build all of these, and that's why I say, that's one of the things I try to tell, particularly with that statistic about half of it being a digital theft and half of it being a physical theft. You've got to cover both bases. If you put everything into just physical theft, you're going to get hit digitally through your network or through software. Or if you do vice versa, you're going to get it. You really got to cover the whole gamut. And but the technology, I feel like we can get that gets better. We make better technology. Now sometimes technology also provides more problems, but it's the people part I feel like just routinely fail. Well, and that kind of that meeting of people and machines really sometimes.
Our listener Dean Larinaga rang in a couple times while we've been chatting here. Checking out in a digital store as a guest is the worst thing you can do with your info, is his worst comment. And the second is the whole conversation is definitely very enlightening, but if you realize how crappy some people are, it's saddening really. And that's the absolute truth on both cases. Because
absolutely,
it is the fact that if you check out as a guest in in a digital store instead of registering your information there. It goes through a totally different security process.
Ooh, that's not cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point that he made there, and I mean, you know, and you know, it is. I mean, it is sometimes over. You know, I just, you know, particularly when you're in this field, you're sometimes like, man, this is. I mean, can I ever win at this? You know, and I don't know if winning's the right word. Again, I always go back to just I want to minimize my risk. I want to minimize my exposure as best that I can. And I think that's a good, you know, what I try to tell organizations too is that, look, you know, I think that consumers, if you get breached, consumers are going to be much more, you know, sympathetic if you're doing everything that you can.
Yeah.
If you're an organization that says, look, we've done these 30, 50 things, whatever it is, you know, we were doing this, and we just still, you know, it happened, as opposed to somebody going, we didn't do anything. You know, we had really no controls in place. I think people, you know, generally will be, you know, kind of tolerant of that. Well, and I think that's where we want, you know, we want people to be doing as much as the best that they can at this point.
The thing is, it happens in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And as someone who owns websites, as someone who
shops Amazon,
who helps build websites and secure websites for people, I tell people all the time, number one, it's your highest compliment when you get shut down your first time.
Oh yeah, you told me that. I remember that.
When you get shut down for your first time because of suspicious traffic or whatever, that means like you have rang up on Google. Like you have made a footprint on the internet now.
Right.
And like people have gone, they may have some information I want. So like that's quite honestly the biggest tip of the hat internet wise that you can get is that you've actively been
kind of like the bad publicity is good publicity, right?
Well, kind of, you know, but it's one of those like, wow, you know, like the hackers just tipped their hat to me, you know, like they said, you may have some information I want, when really like Dudes and Beer takes no information.
Right.
There's a comment box where it's like you can leave a comment, stuff like that, you know. But I've had.
And you know, that's a really good. Also, if you're an organization, have you ever sat down and kind of gone through kind of like the life cycle of data that you have? Right? That's what I call it. Is you go, where does it come in? Where does it sit? Where does it go? And ultimately, how do you get rid of it? And again, going, hey, why are we taking this piece of information? Is there any really good reason, or are we taking it because, you know, why the hell not? And maybe we'll use it down the road.
Yeah.
Or do we have a really concrete reason for that particular piece of data? And, you know, and that's something I think you're really, I mean, particularly under GDPR, are really going to have to start doing is, looking at, you know, data minimization, going, okay, you know, I absolutely have to have this in order to transact business, but maybe this I don't have to have. I don't really need it. You know, it could come in handy down the road, but it's better if we just don't take it, because then it's just more headache for us, you know, and for the consumer as well. And that's what I really hope you'll start seeing organizations become mature, is when they start doing that, really looking at, okay, do I need it, or am I just taking it because, you know, they're giving it to me, why the hell not? I'll just take everything and figure it out later.
Well, and quite honestly, like even with the Dudes and Beer website, that was something that I struggled with at the beginning, because so many people have SurveyMonkey, you know, all these other things that are there on their website.
Don't trust nothing that has monkey.
That kind of stuff. Well, and they're paid services, that kind of stuff, and they help you build. They help you build email lists, that kind of thing. But it's one of those that, quite honestly, like any podcast I'm following. Like I don't necessarily need an email alert. You know, like I don't need that information.
Nah.
You know, and going back to what Dean was talking about earlier, our listener, with information like Facebook and things like that, and what you can do to mitigate that, especially in the mobile world. I remember whenever I was on air, we had John McAfee on, Sean, and something that you may want to check into.
Sometimes pronounced Akavy, right?
Is Decentral One.
I've got it on my phone.
It's a great app that actually shows you what every single app on your phone actively accesses.
Wow, so, that's called Decentral One?
Decentral One. The letter D and then Central and then one spelled out.
You know what?
Decentral one, and John McAfee made it, and it's there to actively show people what all of the apps on your phone actively access. Right. Because whenever you download an app, like it gives you some permissions, but it didn't give you all of them.
Right. I like the way I've had this thing for like maybe a week now, and I've been meaning to download it a long time ago, but I just recently gotten it, and within the last week I want to like uninstall everything because I mean it's been giving me these alerts just here and there, not like constant or nothing, but the things are telling me that like, hey, this program blah 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 blah, and what it's accessing, it's like maybe, I'm one of those people that just passed by the service agreement or whatever the agreement. Yep. And, but it's literally breaking it down very simple, and to where I'm like, wait a minute, like, dude, that's kind of deep, man. Like, I didn't want this thing to know this. Yeah. Why is it taking this information?
Exactly.
Well, and I think, that's what my hope is, again, with GDPR, is that's going to be something that people are going to have to start looking at. I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but that's the kind of stuff that, you should be able to know exactly, or you have the right to know exactly, or at least, the EU, according to the EU, what are they doing with that data? And it can't be, they make a distinction about being automated. It just can't be, an automated process. You have to be able to say exactly what it's doing. And that's just that's a vastly different theory of things than over here, where it's like, okay, well, and I'm just carte blanche handing it over, and you can do whatever, whatever you want with
I'm
it.
so glad that you brought that up again, because it's something that I wanted to touch on, because we mentioned it in our phone call the other day. The revelations made by Edward Snowden, I think, had a lot to do with what the EU has decided is identity. Because we tend to just forget what the dude actually divulged, and what systems were involved in gathering information and just a net en masse amongst people internationally, crossing borders, things like that. Like it rang bells like in embassies across Europe.
Exactly.
Because they found out that they were being actively hacked by this stuff. And I think it's something
Merkel was
that,
being recorded.
like I said in our conversation the other day, I think we have a very short-term memory when it comes to these things as a nation. And unfortunately, we see that as something that was revealed that we go,
it's like we're desensitized now.
But quite literally, it's such a huge data breach. Like it's a purposeful data breach. Amongst anything, forget Equifax. Like this is something that you actively signed on for, people.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, and I think that's why. That's why people ask me, okay, I think that GDPR, I don't know how long it's going to take for sort of GDPR to sort of, to become invasive into this country. I mean, I think people are scrambling to get ready for it and prepare for it. Again, and there's going to be, how fast are they going to enforce it? How hard are they going to enforce it when you have somebody that's not in compliance with it? Or they're, but what I do feel like is that it's going to change the tone of the conversation, and it's going to put so much more emphasis on data, and data that really it belongs to somebody, not just sort of it doesn't really tie to anybody, and that it really belongs to somebody. That's somebody's very, very personal things that identify them. Assets. Really, I keep going back to that. It's an asset.
It's your digital signature.
Yeah, and so I think that when I first sat down and started reading some of the 99 articles of GDPR, it was kind of like going, man, I've been, and not myself alone, but a lot of people, we've been kind of banging our heads and preaching this stuff for a while, and it was sort of an affirmation that somebody else gets this. And that it's going to force organizations to kind of go along with this now, I think. And I don't know how long it's going to take, but I think that eventually it's going to. I think ultimately it's going to be a good thing. I think it's going to be a great thing for consumers. It's going to be, there's going to be some businesses that are going to struggle with it, and but I think ultimately, just the change in philosophy is going to be very good for us as a consumer.
Well, and Dean Larinaga just chimed in just a second ago. It's a lack of understanding and being naive to what it is that they are actually doing. Net neutrality is going to set America on fire. That's something that I brought up whenever it first started happening. Number one, it was suspicious to me when they gave control of the internet to the FCC. Literally, a government edifice that does nothing more than license and regulate the licensing of airwaves and communication. And it was like, that to me is curious. And then they didn't even make them like rewrite their charter.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, you didn't even make them rewrite their charter? Like, how long before people like us, even podcasts, are considered broadcast and have to have a license to operate?
Go the whole
How long before websites themselves, because it already started with ICANN registration, things like that a couple years ago, where it was like you have to internationally register yourself as the owner of a website. Before that, it was fairly anonymous, and I understand the reasons behind that because of Alibaba, a lot of black market websites, even slave trading websites, horrible human trafficking stuff that I know you've been involved with and other people
dark
that
web into Tor
have on here been involved with. But where do you stand on that kind of stuff? Where do you stand on net neutrality and the issue facing us with throttling information to people?
Well, one of the things, and I don't really, I'll be straight up, I don't really know yet. It's one of those things, like today I read a very lengthy article about it, and it's one of those things I've started kind of, peeking into and to see as I understand it, and I don't understand, I would not say I fully understand what the ultimate goal of this is going to be. But one of the things that seemed to be popping up was, possibly moving this into the to the purview of the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission.
Yeah.
And I know that, that is clearly, there's some concern about them having, less enforcement ability on that as well. And if that, is that purposeful? So I don't really know yet. It's one of those things where I've been so busy with GDPR, I haven't had a chance to really. And I tell people all the time, this stuff changes so fast.
It does.
Trying to stay on top of it is a job in itself. I literally, like I told somebody the other day, I literally could sit around and read all day and not get 1 ounce of work done because there's so much out there. There's so much that's coming out every day and so forth. So I don't. It's going to be interesting to watch this happen, and I don't know. But I do see that it was, a concern a lot of people had was the kind of the switch from the FCC to the FTC on this thing, and what that's ultimately going to do to it. And so I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, and I don't think that we're going to know the answer until they straight up give us the answer. Like, it's something that's literally going to be passed. And unfortunately, even when net neutrality was given over to the FCC and control of the internet was given over, it was one of those situations that was much like the ACA where it was too big to read. We had to pass it to see what's in it. And that's a horrible scenario legally,
huge stack of papers
to be in, to have to pass it to see what's in it.
It's already done.
Like,
you signed that already.
Yeah,
and so it's gonna be those things where I'm gonna, it's one of those topics where I need to do a bunch of more, kind of digging.
Oh,
into
absolutely.
It.
I just kind of cornered you on it.
Some of it's the one thing. I got a lot of opinions. That's the one thing I don't, that was kind of one of my focal concerns.
It's a slippery slope, I think.
when you switch it from there to the other enforcement agency, and what that's going to do, and I don't know what that's going to look like.
Yeah, it's an odd future for that, and just looking like we were saying at digital rights themselves, your identity as an individual online, your digital identity as opposed to your physical identity, what the ramifications of that are growing on the daily.
Oh, absolutely.
And like we said, I work conferences all the time, and it seems to me like the regulation is catching up with the technology consistently across the board.
And I say that always, like particularly in the area of criminal law, technology is always advancing, laws, particularly in the criminal law side of things, and so that never really surprises me that we just in that area we just take a little bit longer to sort of catch up, and one of the things that that a lot of people don't realize is that on the federal side of things, if you look at statistically, like I think it was 2014, that most of the cases that were prosecuted by a federal prosecutor's office were usually narcotics violations, immigration violations, and gun violations.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Identity theft cases were really on the low spectrum of that. And as were computer intrusion cases, breach cases, which is a 1030 violation, 18 USC 1030 violation. And so, I kind of find it interesting that as this becomes more prevalent, and we're talking about this, and it's becoming more of a concern. And when are we on the enforcement side going to sort of catch up with that? And I don't know the answer to that. I always tell somebody that my unit was, when we started, we were a 5-man unit, and really grew to about an 8-man unit when I left. We had an operating budget of about $50,000 that would pay for the officers, the police officers, their vehicles, fuel, equipment, stuff like that. And that we covered almost the entire part of South Texas really was our jurisdiction. And we couldn't go that far a lot because we just had too many cases in the surrounding San Antonio area. But I couldn't even count the amount of narcotics groups that were working, task forces that were working in that general area. And so and it's really more of a point to say, okay, we're obviously, our regulations about it are getting stiffer, but when are we going to, in the law enforcement side, is it going to be more of a priority? And I don't know the answer to that. Some jurisdictions it is, some jurisdictions it's not, or it's solely based off. It has to be a case with a very high loss on it to get attention. And then, what about if you have a bunch of guys running around doing a little bit of loss, to a bunch of people, and it ultimately adds up? How does that affect it? Yeah. And and what's the more priority?
Exactly.
I mean, and I'm not espousing, I'm just saying, is drugs. I mean, is that our really, our problem, or is it, theft of data right now? What is our, our problem? And again, that's not that's a question more than it is a statement.
Well, and it definitely varies from demographic to demographic, city to city.
Some priorities,
as to what your more pressing issue is.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guarantee you border towns have a much greater issue with one than the other. Especially in the state of Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, things like that.
Laredo.
Yeah, and one of the things I always try to make sure people understood too is that identity crimes have a very close relationship with a lot of other types of offenses. So
Indeed.
You have in narcotics trafficking, you have these spin-off credit card company, sort of operations, and because they can make a lot of money. I've also seen, a lot of people that I dealt with on the Aryan Brotherhood, which was an organization that we chased around San Antonio quite a bit, were very prolific identity thieves because the amount of the drugs that they were using, they couldn't really hold a job. So that was one of the ways that they could survive and make money was by stealing identities. But they were stealing hundreds and hundreds a week.
Yeah.
Just out of
adept
control.
at it.
And very adept at it, very good at it. Had a lot of time to kind of hone their craft. Where it had some very technical expertise, to it, and so there's a lot of cases that if you looked far enough, you were going to see some component of identity crime related to it. Mortgage fraud, bank fraud, wire fraud, all these kind of cases usually have, there could be some component of identity in it as well. And I think people don't necessarily realize that. And that's, again, why it is such it's such an issue, and something that we took pretty serious on my squad, was because I recognized that those other ancillary crimes that were being committed along with it. Yeah,
that were in utter connection to the crime.
Yep.
And, as we close out this episode, Sean, I'd first off like to thank you so much for coming on. The presentation that I saw you give was more than enlightening, and having you on the show was even more so.
I hope so. I hope I was able to. I hope I was able to provide some hopefully some good news too.
oh, absolutely. And as we close out, I'd like you to give people the 4 tips that you would give to protecting yourself as you shop online and as you shop at local establishments during this holiday season.
Well, first and foremost, if you can, just use the one credit card. That's a really good, simple way to be able to limit your exposure online. Another thing is right now, particularly during the holiday seasons, really and this is not online, but really be careful with your mail. I mean, this is going to be a really high, target area right now for that. Take it to the post office. There's lots of stuff, coming. And particularly outgoing mail, you're going to have. Yeah. Still, people write a lot of checks. There's still going to be.
You can buy envelopes that do not say Hallmark on them, folks.
Yeah, absolutely.
So big tip.
That's one of those things, and when you go in there and somebody asks you for some information, whether it's if you're shopping online and they're getting you to do an online survey, or they're getting you to sign up for something, or we're going to say, hey, look, why do you need this particular piece of information? If it's a date of birth, do you really need to give your real date of birth?
Exactly. Is it necessity for what I'm doing right now?
I do it all the time whenever I check into hotels. Can we get your email address? Do you absolutely need that?
Joe Blow at yahoo.com.
Because like I said, if you do, here's my Hotmail address.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and you mentioned it earlier, is if you have to give a piece of information, give a piece of information that will identify you, but is less likely to expose you to risk. Yes. I always say, driver's license number, is that great if that gets exposed? No, but is it better than your social? Yes.
God, yes.
Or your date of birth? Absolutely.
So, God, yes.
I'm gonna hide that. SSL.
Trying to use other things that can identify you, but are not as risky when you put them out there if they get exposed or so forth.
Yeah.
So, those are kind of the really, the things that you really, those are very simplistic things, but they're also, if you get directed to a website and it just doesn't, it doesn't look good, then just get out of it. Do you really need that item that bad?
Exactly.
That's, that kind of, there was that saying somebody told me once at a function, and it was like, hover before you click. I thought that was a great, just look and see what it looked like, and
make sure.
If you're questioning it, get out of it. Go somewhere else. Like I said, man.
Yeah, guarantee you it's available somewhere else.
Yeah.
If you got to sit there and think about it.
Simple things that, and then just always be saying, hey, look, do I really need to give this piece of information? Is it really valuable? I know it's valuable to me, but what's the value to them, and why would they need it? And, I find that if you do that, if you're always kind of questioning why people need things, you will get in a habit of kind of giving less and less, and giving only what you really need to give.
Yeah.
And there's still a risk with that, but you're minimizing that risk, like we talked about. You're trying to minimize that exposure as best you can.
As someone who worked personal security, as someone who worked crowd lines, things like that, it's something that I have tried to ingrain in my wife so much, even though she was a person of New York, things like that. It's the fact of you need to minimize yourself as a personal target. If you're walking to the theater, honey, like all you need is your ID and your debit card to be able to pay for parking. Like you don't need a purse, like especially during the holiday season, the shopping season, things like that.
Right.
What is it that people can do to minimize their personal exposure in public, to make sure that they are not crowdsourcing themselves as an advertisement to local thieves, things like that?
Yeah, you always got to be. I'm amazed that if you ever sit around and say like Starbucks or a coffee shop or something, and you listen to somebody talking and providing their info over the phone.
Yes.
Oh, geez.
Yes.
It happens more than you. I mean, if you sit around and listen long enough, I guarantee you somebody's going to be telling somebody some information over that.
I'm one of the only people I know that actively looks for a way out to every room that I walk into.
Right.
Yeah, and just and that is one of the I think the biggest thing is that recognizing that people are doing that.
Sean just gave me an idea. I mean, like literally, like somebody could walk into Starbucks and do that whole thing where everybody's sitting there doing their laptop, and if you had something like just recording the whole fucking atmosphere, and then like somebody's going to rattle off some personal shit,
Oh, absolutely. No, and inevitably will happen.
Yep.
Inevitably it will happen, and so that's kind of one of those things where you just you got to be. Does it have you have to give that information to that person right now? Can you hang up, walk out, and call them back?
Right.
Wait till you get in your car. Why give it? Because I guarantee you somebody, and I've caught myself. I've had to catch myself going, going, hey, I need this number and I need your credit card number. I'm like, okay, yeah, or I need your social. Okay, and then I'm like, hey, wait a minute. I'm looking around like I don't know who's paying attention to this.
I'm not in a secure atmosphere right now.
Yeah, exactly. And just saying, okay, I'll call you back, or I'll walk out and try to do that at a different time. And again, it's like those are just very simple things, but those are things that I see people get hit quite a bit with.
Well,
and like, okay, if I can knock out some of the simple things, then that's some of the stuff that I control.
Even the quite honest question of, is that information absolutely necessary right now?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Why do you really, and if you ask that question, you'd be surprised at how many times somebody will be like,
it's not.
Really?
It's not.
I've never tried it. Well, can you still get through?
Oh, yeah.
Really? Okay.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. No, that information isn't necessary. You don't need to. Good God, man, the Social Security system is voluntary.
Yeah, I mean,
I chose to enter my child into the Social Security system when he was born.
Oh, that's interesting.
That was an optional thing.
Oh. Wow.
So, I mean, you just
weird.
Again, it's asking those questions, and and it makes, and I mean, people to try to avoid conflict. But if you start, like I said, if you start doing that, I think you find you kind of give yourself a little bit of, it kind of empowers you a little bit.
It does.
You feel like, okay, it's mine. It's my information. You got to give me a good reason why you need it at this particular point, or you need it in this format, or is there some other piece of information I can give you that doesn't, is not going to be as risky. And and again, those are the kind of things that you really gotta, you gotta think about.
Yeah.
And, and recognize that during the holiday season, there's lots of people sitting around trying to figure out how to, scam you.
Yep.
And you just need to be cognizant of that. And, you may need to think that you may need to, consider it's a scam before you consider it's legitimate. And then,
that's a good way.
A big one, folks, is number one,
security first.
Number one, Google. And number two, Microsoft. Two companies that will never call you.
Yeah.
Okay? They will not call you. If Google is calling you, that is a scam. That's somebody trying to sell you services to set up a Google account that you could set up for free. Nothing more.
I just got a phishing email from my bank the other day, and I was like, at no time would they ever really have to send you to confirm your information.
That's right.
They got it.
Oh, God.
That's right. They have your information.
Yeah, you got it.
They got your information. People fall for that.
They're the ones that confirm your information when you log in.
It's like you got it. You didn't see right. Look again, brother.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm always like, how much would it have taken you to okay, well, just call and say, hey, I got this weird email or I got this weird phone call from you guys. trying to confirm my info. You really, and most 99% of the time, I go like that wasn't. That was a scam. Don't do it.
Yeah.
But I mean, how much effort did it take you to just, make that one phone call?
That's it. That's it. And quite honestly, like, because of the frequency with which I shop on Amazon, I get stuff from Amazon scams, and I send them to Amazon.
Yeah.
And they thank me for it.
Trying to confirm shit.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Most definitely. Like, call people. Like, hey, call your bank, man. There's nothing better than having an actual person to I went with a savings. I went with a credit union so that I could have a personal relationship with my banker again.
Right.
And have that information. And like when I travel, they question it.
Yeah.
And they question it a hell of a lot more than Bank of America did.
And that's like
said,
the whole
if
point.
Somebody sent you an email asking you to give him $100, you would definitely, first of all, you would go, what the hell? And then you would call.
Exactly.
So why not do it with your information, which is 10 times more valuable than that $100? So that's kind of what I always go back to that sort of that scenario.
That's a great mentality to have. And as we close out, everybody, please make sure to visit identity.utexas.edu. Tell us once again about the programs that you offer, the information that y'all offer online, even the packets of information that you offer to regular people for free.
Good info.
Yeah, absolutely. You go on there, you'll find all sorts of information. There's a game that your kids can utilize called Beat the Thief, which really kind of gives them a sense of the value of their information. There, if you're interested in the 3-day program, please visit that. If you're really interested in the master's degree program, I teach in it. I can tell you it's the only program in the country around that discipline right now. Kind of that
growing huge discipline.
And so I think you'll find a lot of really, really good and useful information on there. And again, our contact is there. So if you ever have any questions or any concerns or any or you see a new scam or you see something, give us a call. We learn as much when we teach as we do from our students sometimes because this stuff is always happening and there's new stuff happening on a daily basis. So
Absolutely. And, I couldn't have put it better. It's the fact that it is an ever-growing industry of crime out there, folks. The people of criminal mindset are way more dedicated than those of us that are not of criminal mindset.
Exactly.
And we need to be careful of that. We need to be wary of that. Arshawn McClesky, I cannot thank you enough for being on the show.
Same
I'd
here.
love to have you on regular episodes talking about security, talking about biometric data, things like that, as things in the industry continue to go in this realm and continue to legally change, not only in our country, but the world over. So hold the line. We'll talk about some stuff. And until next time, everybody, please remember to check us out online. Dudesandbeer.com is the website. You can check us out on the HC Universal Network. We have all kinds of videos that are released.
We got good videos.
Great content. Until next time,
a knowledge vault I like.
Remember, if you can't be good, be good at it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Dudes and Beer Podcast. To listen to our audio streams and chat with us live, download the official Dudes and Beer app for both Android and iDevices, available on the Google Play and iTunes markets. For more episodes, content, and information, visit us online at dudesandbeer.com. You can also find our episodes on Spreaker, SoundCloud, YouTube, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast service. Thanks for listening, everybody. And until next time, drink responsibly.